Question 1. Following a comprehensive review of its initial business impact analysis, BIA, conducted according to ISO 22317-2015, a global logistics firm, Swift Parcel Logistics, discovered that several key performance indicators, KPI, used to quantify financial impacts were based on outdated market data and did not fully account for the cascading effects of regulatory noncompliance penalties, a factor that has become more prominent due to recent changes in international trade laws. Which of the following actions would best exemplify the principle of continuous improvement in their BIA process, ensuring its ongoing relevance and accuracy? Option A. Updating the BIA document with revised financial impact figures, incorporating the latest market data and a more granular assessment of regulatory penalty risks, and then initiating a review of the recovery strategies to align with the newly established impact thresholds. Option B. Focusing solely on improving the communication of the BIA findings to the executive team, assuming the underlying data and methodology remain sufficiently robust for current operational needs. Option C. Archiving the existing BIA report and commencing a completely new BIA from scratch to address all identified deficiencies and incorporate all new regulatory requirements from the ground up. Option D. Conducting a single workshop with department heads to solicit their opinions on potential future impacts without formalizing the revised data or integrating it into the existing BIA framework. Correct answer is A. Updating the BIA document with revised financial impact figures, incorporating the latest market data and a more granular assessment of regulatory penalty risks, and then initiating a review of the recovery strategies to align with the newly established impact thresholds. Explanation. The core principle of continuous improvement in the context of ISO 22317-2015, particularly concerning business impact analysis, BIA, is the iterative refinement of the BIA process and its outputs based on lessons learned and evolving organizational needs. This involves a cyclical approach where the insights gained from conducting a BIA, including identifying critical activities, dependencies, and impact thresholds, are used to update the BIA itself, as well as related business continuity strategies and plans. This iterative process ensures that the BIA remains relevant and effective in supporting the organization's resilience objectives. For example, if a BIA identifies a critical dependency on a specific IT system, and subsequent testing or a real incident reveals that the recovery time objective, RTO, for that system is no longer achievable due to unforeseen technical constraints or changes in the business environment, this information should feed back into the BIA to revise the RTO and potentially trigger a reassessment of the business continuity strategy for that activity. This aligns with the broader principles of management system improvement found in standards like ISO 9001, emphasizing learning from experience and adapting to change. It's not about simply updating the BIA document in isolation, but about using its findings to drive tangible improvements in the organization's ability to withstand and recover from disruptions. This includes refining the methodology for data collection, improving the accuracy of impact assessments, and enhancing the communication of BIA results to stakeholders responsible for implementing continuity measures. The ultimate goal is to foster a culture of proactive risk management and resilience. Question 2. When conducting a business impact analysis, BIA, as per ISO 22317-2015, what primary considerations should guide the assessment of health and safety impacts, particularly in light of potential regulatory noncompliance and employee well-being? Option A. Determining the percentage of employees who would require psychological counseling following a major incident and assessing the market perception of the organization's safety record. Option B. Evaluating potential physical harm to individuals, legal liabilities arising from duty of care breaches, and the impact on the organization's ability to maintain operational continuity due to compromised health and safety resources. Option C. Identifying all potential environmental hazards that could indirectly affect employee health and calculating the time required to restore critical IT systems after a health-related disruption. Option D. Quantifying the financial losses associated with workplace accidents and estimating the cost of implementing new safety protocols to prevent future incidents. Correct answer is B. Evaluating potential physical harm to individuals, legal liabilities arising from duty of care breaches, and the impact on the organization's ability to maintain operational continuity due to compromised health and safety resources. Explanation: ISO 22317, 2015, specifically in the context of business impact analysis, BIA, mandates a thorough consideration of various impacts that could arise from a disruptive event. When assessing health and safety impacts, the standard emphasizes identifying and quantifying potential harm to individuals, including employees, customers, and the public. This involves evaluating the severity of injuries, the potential for fatalities, and the psychological distress that may result. Furthermore, the BIA must consider the regulatory and legal ramifications associated with health and safety breaches, such as fines, litigation, and reputational damage, the impact on the organization's ability to meet its duty of care obligations, as stipulated by legislation like the Occupational Safety and Health Act (OSHA) in the United States or similar national regulations, is a crucial element. The analysis should also consider the cascading effects on operational continuity and resource availability if health and safety personnel or critical infrastructure are compromised. Therefore, a comprehensive health and safety impact assessment within a BIA framework would encompass the direct physical harm, the associated legal liabilities, and the indirect consequences on the organization's capacity to respond and recover. Question 3. During a business impact analysis for a multinational technology firm operating in the European Union, a critical disruption to its primary data processing center is identified. The firm must ensure continued adherence to the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. Which of the following legal and regulatory impact considerations would be most critical to assess within the BIA to maintain GDPR compliance during and after the disruption? Option A. The ability to demonstrate the integrity and confidentiality of personal data processing activities and the timely notification of data breaches to supervisory authorities. Option B. The impact on the company's stock price and shareholder confidence due to potential service interruptions. Option C. The cost of replacing damaged hardware and the time required to re-establish network connectivity. Option D. The potential for increased competition from other market players during the period of operational downtime. The correct answer is A. The ability to demonstrate the integrity and confidentiality of personal data processing activities and the timely notification of data breaches to supervisory authorities. Explanation: the fundamental purpose of a business impact analysis, BIA, as outlined in ISO 22317/2015, is to identify and evaluate the potential effects of disruptions on business operations. When considering legal and regulatory impacts, the focus shifts to understanding how a disruption could lead to noncompliance with statutory obligations or contractual agreements. This noncompliance can manifest in various ways, including failure to meet data protection requirements e.g., GDPR, CCPA, breaches of financial reporting standards, or violations of industry-specific regulations. The BIA must therefore assess the likelihood and consequences of such breaches, which can include significant financial penalties, reputational damage, legal liabilities, and operational sanctions. Identifying specific regulatory frameworks applicable to the organization sector and geographical locations is crucial. For instance, a financial services firm would need to consider regulations like SOX or Basel Roman III, while a healthcare provider would focus on HIPAA. The BIA would then map potential operational disruptions to specific regulatory requirements, determining the impact of a failure to comply. This involves understanding the triggers for non-compliance, the potential penalties, and the timeframes within which corrective actions must be taken to mitigate further legal ramifications. The ultimate goal is to inform the development of appropriate business continuity strategies that ensure ongoing compliance even during disruptive events. Question 4. A global fintech company relies on its real-time transaction processing platform for daily operations. Regulatory compliance, such as the timely reporting of financial transactions to oversight bodies and adherence to data privacy principles under laws like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, is paramount. During a business impact analysis, BIA, as per ISO 22317/2015, What is the most significant factor to consider when determining the recovery time objective RTO and recovery point objective RPO for this critical system? Option A. The number of dependent internal business processes that are indirectly affected by the transaction processing system's unavailability. Option B. The escalating financial and reputational damage due to extended downtime, compounded by potential regulatory penalties for delayed or lost transaction data. Option C. The technical expertise of the IT staff responsible for system recovery and their familiarity with the underlying infrastructure. Option D. The availability and cost of redundant hardware and software required to restore the system to full operational capacity. Correct answer is B. The escalating financial and reputational damage due to extended downtime, compounded by potential regulatory penalties for delayed or lost transaction data. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 22317-2015 in conducting a business impact analysis, BIA, is to identify and prioritize critical business functions based on their impact over time. This involves understanding the dependencies between functions and the resources required to operate them. When assessing the recovery time objective RTO and recovery point objective RPO, the methodology focuses on the maximum tolerable downtime before unacceptable consequences arise. For a financial transaction processing system, the impact of an outage escalates rapidly. A delay of even a few minutes can lead to significant financial losses, reputational damage, and regulatory noncompliance, particularly under regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, or specific financial sector regulations that mandate timely processing and data integrity. Therefore, the most critical factor influencing the BIA for such a system is the escalating nature of financial and reputational damage due to prolonged unavailability, which dictates a very low RTO and RPO. Other factors, while important, are secondary to the direct, quantifiable, and rapidly increasing negative financial and legal repercussions. Question 5. A financial services firm, regulated by stringent data protection laws and with a mandate to maintain continuous market access, is conducting its business impact analysis. Several operational units are being assessed. Which combination of factors would most effectively guide the prioritization of these units for recovery efforts, ensuring compliance and operational resilience in line with ISO 22317-2015 principles? Option A. The direct financial loss associated with each unit's downtime, the cost of implementing recovery solution, and the ease of outsourcing the unit's functions. Option B. Maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, recovery time objectives, RTO, interdependencies between functions, and applicable legal and regulatory compliance requirements. Option C. The potential for reputational damage, the availability of alternative technologies, and the current workload of the IT department supporting each unit. Option D. The perceived importance of each unit to senior management, the number of employees in each unit, and the historical frequency of minor disruptions. Correct answer is B. Maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, recovery time objectives, RTO, interdependencies between functions, and applicable legal and regulatory compliance requirements. Explanation. ISO 22317-2015, the standard for business impact analysis, BIA, outlines a systematic process for identifying and evaluating the potential effects of disruptions on business operations. A core element of the BIA process is the prioritization of business functions and activities. This prioritization is not arbitrary, but is driven by specific criteria that reflect the organization's strategic objectives, regulatory obligations, and stakeholder expectations. When determining the criticality of a business function, organizations must consider several factors. These include the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, which is the longest duration a function can be unavailable without causing unacceptable consequences. Another crucial factor is the recovery time objective, RTO, which is the target time within which a function must be restored after a disruption. The interdependencies between different functions are also vital. A disruption to a seemingly less critical function might have a cascading effect on more critical ones. Furthermore, legal and regulatory requirements such as data privacy laws e.g., GDPR if applicable, or similar national regulations, or industry-specific compliance mandates often dictate the urgency and priority of restoring certain activities, especially those involving sensitive data or critical public services. Financial impact, while important, is often a consequence of these other factors rather than the sole determinant of priority. Therefore, the most comprehensive approach to prioritization integrates the MTPD, RTO, interdependencies, and compliance obligations. Question 6. Consider a scenario where a regional data center supporting an international financial institution experiences a prolonged power outage. This outage directly impacts the institution's online trading platform, halting all real-time transactions. Furthermore, the same data center houses the Customer Relationship Management, CRM system, which is essential for client support and account management. In the context of ISO 22317, 2015, which of the following best describes the most critical consideration when assessing the operational impact of this dual disruption, beyond the immediate loss of trading functionality? Option A. The cost of repairing or replacing the damaged power infrastructure at the data center, as this is a direct operational expense resulting from the incident. Option B. Cumulative effect of the inability to process new client onboarding and manage existing client inquiries due to CRM system unavailability, potentially leading to regulatory breaches related to client service level agreements and data handling. Option C. The direct financial loss incurred from the cessation of trading activities, which can be calculated by averaging the daily trading volume and multiplying it by the duration of the outage. Option D. The impact on employee morale and productivity due to the inability to access their workstations, as this is a human resource-related operational consequence. The correct answer is B. The cumulative effect of the inability to process new client onboarding and manage existing client inquiries due to CRM system unavailability, potentially leading to regulatory breaches related to client service level agreements and data handling. Explanation. The core of a business impact analysis, BIA, under ISO 22317, 2015, is to understand the cascading effects of disruptions on an organization's operations and its ability to meet its objectives. This involves identifying critical business functions, determining their dependencies, and quantifying the impacts over time. When assessing operational impacts, a key consideration is the interrelationship between different processes and the potential for a single point of failure to disrupt multiple activities. For instance, if a critical IT system supporting customer service also manages order fulfillment, its unavailability would not only halt direct customer interactions, but also prevent the processing of new orders, leading to a dual impact. The analysis must also consider external factors, such as regulatory compliance obligations that might be impacted by a disruption. Failure to meet these obligations, like data privacy requirements under regulations such as GDPR or CCPA, can result in severe penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust, which are significant operational impacts. Therefore, when evaluating the operational impact of a disruption, it is crucial to consider not just the direct loss of service for a specific function, but also the downstream consequences across the entire value chain and the potential for regulatory noncompliance. This holistic view ensures that the BIA accurately reflects the true extent of a disruption's effect on the organization's resilience. Question 7. Consider a scenario where a critical financial transaction processing system for an international logistics firm, Global Freight Forwarders, experiences an unexpected outage. The system is essential for invoicing, customs clearance, and payment processing. During the outage, which of the following approaches most accurately captures the comprehensive financial losses anticipated by ISO 22317, 2015, encompassing both immediate and downstream economic consequences? Option A. Focusing solely on the immediate loss of revenue from shipments that could not be processed during the first 24 hours of the system outage. Option B. Estimating the total salaries of all employees who were unable to perform their duties during the outage, regardless of their direct involvement with the affected system. Option C. Calculating the cost of replacing the damaged server hardware and the expense of hiring temporary data entry personnel to manually process transactions during the downtime. Option D. Summing the direct costs of emergency IT support and overtime for staff, plus an estimate of lost revenue from delayed shipments and penalties for late customs filings, while also considering the potential long-term impact of reputational damage on future contract negotiations. The correct answer is D. Summing the direct costs of emergency IT support and overtime for staff, plus an estimate of lost revenue from delayed shipments and penalties for late customs filings, while also considering the potential long-term impact of reputational damage on future contract negotiations. Explanation: the fundamental principle of calculating financial losses in a business impact analysis, BIA, according to ISO 22317-2015, is to identify and quantify the direct and indirect costs associated with the disruption of critical business functions. Direct costs are those immediately attributable to the incident, such as overtime pay for recovery staff, emergency repair expenses, or the cost of engaging external consultants. Indirect costs, often more substantial and harder to quantify, represent the lost revenue due to inability to provide goods or services, penalties for contractual breaches, reputational damage leading to future lost business, and increased operational costs incurred during the recovery phase. ISO 22317 emphasizes a holistic approach, requiring consideration of all potential financial impacts, not just immediate outlays. This involves mapping the duration of the disruption to the escalating financial consequences. For instance, a prolonged outage of a customer-facing system will likely incur escalating revenue loss and potentially customer churn, which is a significant indirect cost. Regulatory fines for noncompliance, if applicable due to the nature of the disruption, e.g., data breach impacting GDPR requirements, also fall under financial losses that must be factored in. The goal is to establish a clear link between the disruption of a specific business function and its quantifiable financial ramifications to prioritize recovery efforts based on the severity of the financial impact. Question 8. When conducting a business impact analysis according to ISO 22317-2015, what is the most effective methodology for determining the precise human, technological, and informational resources essential for the sustained operation of a critical business function, particularly when considering regulatory mandates like data protection laws? Option A. A granular mapping of each critical function to its specific personnel roles, required IT infrastructure, software applications, data sets, and compliance-related information handling protocols. Option B. Prioritizing the identification of resources for non-critical functions first to establish a baseline before addressing critical ones. Option C. Relying solely on historical incident reports to infer resource needs, without proactive identification or consideration of future regulatory changes. Option D. A broad categorization of resource types such as staff, computers, and data without detailing specific quantities or dependencies. The correct answer is A. A granular mapping of each critical function to its specific personnel roles, required IT infrastructure, software applications, data sets, and compliance-related information handling protocols. Explanation: the identification of resources required for critical functions during a business impact analysis, BIA, under ISO 22317-2015 necessitates a thorough understanding of interdependencies. Critical functions are those whose disruption would have a significant adverse impact on the organization. To sustain these functions, specific resources are indispensable. These resources can be broadly categorized into human resources, technological resources, including IT systems, software, and hardware, physical resources, such as facilities, equipment, and supplies, and information resources, data, documentation. The process of identifying these resources involves examining each critical function and determining what is absolutely essential for its operation at a minimum acceptable level. This involves considering not only direct requirements, but also the upstream and downstream dependencies. For instance, a critical customer service function might require specific personnel with particular skill sets, access to a customer relationship management (CRM) system, telecommunication infrastructure, and up-to-date customer data. The analysis must go beyond simply listing these items. It must also consider the quantity, quality, and availability of these resources. For example, simply stating IT system is insufficient. The BIA must specify the particular CRM software, the required server capacity, network bandwidth, and the operational status of these components. Furthermore, regulatory compliance, such as data privacy laws like GDPR or CCPA, may dictate specific requirements for information handling and security, which must be factored into the resource identification for critical functions. The ultimate goal is to establish a clear picture of what is needed to resume or continue a critical function within its defined recovery time objective, RTO, and to a required recovery level objective, RLO. Therefore, the most comprehensive approach to identifying these resources involves a detailed mapping of each critical function to its precise and essential resource needs, considering all categories and potential dependencies. Question 9. Consider a scenario where a regulatory body, such as the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, in the United Kingdom, mandates specific recovery timeframes for critical financial transaction processing. How does the output of a business impact analysis, BIA, conducted in accordance with ISO 22317/2015, directly inform the development of business continuity strategies to meet such external mandates? Option A. The BIA focuses solely on identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, with the business continuity plan development being an entirely separate and unlinked process. Option B. The BIA identifies the maximum tolerable period of disruption and recovery time objectives for critical functions, which then dictate the necessary speed and type of recovery solutions to be implemented in business continuity strategies. Option C. The BIA quantifies the likelihood of disruptive events occurring, which is then used to set the budget for business continuity initiatives without directly influencing the recovery time objectives. Option D. The BIA's primary role is to assess the financial losses incurred during a disruption, providing a justification for insurance claims rather than guiding recovery strategies. The correct answer is B. The BIA identifies the maximum tolerable period of disruption and recovery time objectives for critical functions, which then dictate the necessary speed and type of recovery solutions to be implemented in business continuity strategies. Explanation. The Business Impact Analysis, BIA, is a foundational component of a comprehensive business continuity management, BCM system, outlined in ISO 22317/2015. The BIA's primary function is to identify and evaluate the potential effects of disruptive incidents on business operations, thereby establishing the critical requirements for recovery. Specifically, it determines the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, and the recovery time objective, RTO, for critical business functions and their supporting resources. These outputs directly inform the development of business continuity strategies and plans. Without a thorough BIA, the subsequent stages of BCM, such as strategy selection, plan development, and testing, would lack the necessary data to be effective and aligned with organizational risk appetite and regulatory compliance needs. For instance, if a BIA identifies that a critical customer service function has an MTPD of 24 hours and an RTO of 8 hours, the business continuity strategy must ensure that this function can be resumed within that 8-hour window. This directly influences the selection of recovery solutions, whether through redundant systems, backup facilities, or alternative work arrangements. Therefore, the BIA's findings are indispensable for ensuring that recovery efforts are prioritized and resourced appropriately, directly supporting the overall resilience of the organization. Question 10. When conducting a business impact analysis according to ISO 22317/2015, a manufacturing firm specializing in sensitive medical components discovers that its primary production line has a maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 48 hours due to the perishability of certain raw materials and the risk of market share loss. The organization aims to resume operations within 24 hours to mitigate contractual penalties with key clients. Which of the following best describes the relationship between these two metrics in the context of identifying this production line as a critical business function? Option A. The maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 48 hours is the desired recovery timeframe, and the recovery time objective, RTO, of 24 hours is the regulatory compliance deadline for resuming operations. Option B. The maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 48 hours dictates the absolute latest the production line can be non-operational, making the recovery time objective, RTO, of 24 hours an arbitrary target? Option C. The recovery time objective RTO of 24 hours is established to meet the operational requirement of resuming production before the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 48 hours is exceeded. Option D. The recovery time objective RTO of 24 hours represents the maximum acceptable downtime, while the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 48 hours is the duration required for full operational recovery. The correct answer is C. The recovery time objective RTO of 24 hours is established to meet the operational requirement of resuming production before the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 48 hours is exceeded. Explanation. The process of identifying critical business functions and activities within a business impact analysis, BIA, under ISO 22317-2015, requires a systematic approach to determine which functions are essential for an organization's survival and continued operation. This involves understanding the interdependencies between different processes, the impact of disruptions on stakeholders, and regulatory or legal obligations. A key consideration is the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, which defines the longest acceptable downtime for a business function before unacceptable consequences arise. Another crucial element is the recovery time objective RTO, which specifies the target time within which a business function must be restored after a disruption. The relationship between these two metrics is fundamental. While MTPD sets the absolute limit, RTO is a more practical target for recovery planning. When identifying critical functions, organizations must also consider the dependencies on supporting resources, such as IT systems, personnel, and third-party suppliers. The impact of a disruption is often cumulative. A failure in one seemingly minor activity could cascade and render a critical function inoperable. Therefore, a comprehensive BIA looks beyond isolated functions to understand the entire ecosystem of operations. The selection of critical functions is not arbitrary. It is driven by the potential for severe financial loss, reputational damage, legal penalties, or the inability to meet contractual obligations. This rigorous assessment ensures that recovery efforts are prioritized effectively, aligning with the organization's overall resilience strategy and compliance requirements, such as those mandated by data protection regulations like GDPR, if applicable to the business context. Question 11. Consider the scenario where a business impact analysis team is compiling data on critical business functions for a financial services firm. They have gathered information on process dependencies, resource requirements, and maximum tolerable downtime. To ensure the integrity of this data, which of the following activities would be most crucial for confirming that the gathered information accurately reflects the firm's operational realities and capabilities, thereby supporting the development of reliable recovery strategies? Option A. Ensuring all numerical data points, such as the number of personnel required for a specific function, fall within a predefined acceptable range and adhere to standard data entry formats. Option B. Documenting the source of each data point and assigning a confidence score based on the perceived reliability of the initial data provider. Option C. Implementing automated data quality checks to identify and flag any missing values or improperly formatted entries within the collected BIA dataset. Option D. Cross-referencing the stated recovery time objectives with IT infrastructure logs and conducting interviews with subject matter experts from each affected department to confirm the feasibility of achieving those objectives. The correct answer is D. Cross-referencing the stated recovery time objectives with IT infrastructure logs and conducting interviews with subject matter experts from each affected department to confirm the feasibility of achieving those objectives. Explanation. The core principle of data validation and verification within a business impact analysis, BIA, framework, as guided by standards like ISO 22317-2015, is to ensure the reliability and accuracy of the information gathered. Data validation confirms that the data conforms to predefined rules and constraints, ensuring its logical consistency and adherence to expected formats. For instance, checking if a stated maximum tolerable downtime for a critical process is a positive integer and within a reasonable range for business operations is a form of validation. Data verification, on the other hand, confirms that the data accurately represents the real-world conditions or facts it is intended to capture. This involves cross-referencing information from multiple sources, obtaining expert review, or conducting practical tests to confirm the truthfulness of the data. A robust BIA relies on both. Without validation, the data might be internally contradictory or nonsensical. Without verification, the data, while perhaps internally consistent, may not reflect the actual operational realities or dependencies, leading to flawed impact assessments and recovery strategies. For example, if a BIA report states a critical system has a recovery time objective, RTO, of 4 hours, validation would check if this is a plausible duration given available resources and technical capabilities. Verification would then involve confirming this RTO through discussions with IT and business unit leads, and potentially reviewing historical incident data, or conducting simulated recovery exercises to ensure this stated RTO is achievable and accurate. The ultimate goal is to build confidence in the BIA findings, enabling effective decision-making for business continuity and resilience planning. Question 12. Consider a scenario where a regional seismic event disrupts the primary power grid supplying a large urban center. A key manufacturing plant within the city, specializing in advanced electronics, relies heavily on a continuous supply of purified water for its production processes. The plant also stores significant quantities of volatile organic compounds, VOC, for its manufacturing. If the plant's backup generators fail to activate due to a critical component malfunction during the initial outage, and the secondary water purification systems also experience failure, what is the most comprehensive understanding of the potential business impacts, considering ISO 22317, 2015 principles, and potential regulatory considerations? Option A. The business impact is limited to the cost of repairing the backup generators and water purification systems, as well as the lost profits from the production downtime. Environmental concerns are secondary and not a primary focus of the BIA. Option B. The primary impact is the immediate cessation of manufacturing, leading to lost revenue and contractual penalties. However, a secondary, more severe impact could be the uncontrolled release of stored VOCs into the urban environment due to the failure of containment systems, potentially triggering environmental protection regulations and requiring extensive, costly remediation, alongside significant reputational damage. Option C. The main consequence is the need to relocate the entire manufacturing operation to a different city due to the prolonged power outage, incurring substantial capital expenditure and operational disruption. Option D. The BIA should primarily focus on the time-dependent degradation of sensitive electronic components due to environmental humidity changes, as this directly affects product quality and warranty claims. The correct answer is B. The primary impact is the immediate cessation of manufacturing, leading to lost revenue and contractual penalties. However, a secondary, more severe impact could be the uncontrolled release of stored VOCs into the urban environment due to the failure of containment systems, potentially triggering environmental protection regulations and requiring extensive, costly remediation, alongside significant reputational damage. Explanation. The core of a business impact analysis, BIA, as outlined in ISO 22317-2015, is to understand the cascading effects of disruptions on an organization's operations. While the standard focuses on business processes and their criticality, it also implicitly acknowledges the broader societal and environmental context. When considering environmental impacts, a BIA should not solely focus on direct physical damage to the organization's assets. Instead, it must consider the potential for a disruption to exacerbate existing environmental vulnerabilities or create new ones. For instance, a prolonged power outage at a chemical manufacturing facility could lead to the uncontrolled release of hazardous materials into the surrounding environment, impacting local ecosystems and public health. Such an event would not only disrupt the facility's operations, but also trigger regulatory responses, such as those mandated by environmental protection agencies, and potentially lead to significant remediation costs and reputational damage. Therefore, a comprehensive BIA must extend its analysis beyond immediate operational recovery to encompass the potential for secondary environmental consequences and their subsequent regulatory and financial implications. The identification and assessment of these environmental interdependencies are crucial for developing robust business continuity strategies that account for the full spectrum of risks. Question 13. Consider a global logistics firm, Trans-Global Freight, whose primary customer portal, responsible for real-time shipment tracking and booking, experiences an outage. Analysis of their business impact assessment reveals that beyond 72 hours of unavailability, the firm faces a severe decline in customer trust, potential loss of key contracts due to service-level agreement breaches, and escalating penalties under contractual obligations with major clients for non-delivery of tracking information. Furthermore, prolonged downtime could lead to a significant reputational damage, impacting future business acquisition. Based on these findings, which of the following best represents the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for this critical customer portal, as defined by ISO 22317-2015 principles? Option A, 24 hours to ensure minimal customer inconvenience and maintain competitive advantage in the market. Option B, 48 hours to preemptively safeguard against any potential regulatory scrutiny related to data access and service continuity obligations. Option C, 72 hours, as this is the point at which unacceptable consequences, including significant financial penalties and reputational damage, begin to manifest. Option D, 168 hours, allowing for comprehensive investigation and resolution of the underlying technical issues before customer impact becomes critical. Correct answer is C, 72 hours, as this is the point at which unacceptable consequences, including significant financial penalties and reputational damage, begin to manifest. Explanation: the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, represents the longest duration a business activity can be unavailable without causing unacceptable consequences to the organization. ISO 22317-2015 emphasizes that the MTPD is a critical input for determining recovery strategies and setting recovery time objectives, RTO. It is not simply an arbitrary time limit, but is derived from a thorough analysis of the potential impacts of disruption, considering financial, operational, reputational, legal, and regulatory factors. For instance, if a critical customer-facing system failure for more than 48 hours could lead to irreversible loss of market share and significant regulatory fines under data protection laws like GDPR. Though GDPR is not directly referenced in ISO 22317, the principle of regulatory impact is key. Then the MTPD for that system would be set at 48 hours. This period dictates the urgency and type of recovery solutions required. A shorter MTPD necessitates more robust and immediate recovery mechanisms, potentially involving higher costs, whereas a longer MTPD might allow for phased or less immediate recovery approaches. The MTPD is a forward-looking metric, anticipating the worst-case scenario and setting the boundary for acceptable downtime. Question 14. An organization is conducting a business impact analysis for its primary data processing center, a critical facility housing essential IT infrastructure. The analysis must identify the specific dependencies related to facilities and equipment that directly support the continuous operation of the data processing function. Which of the following best represents the outcome of this phase of the business impact analysis according to ISO 22317-2015? Option A, a summary of the data center's architectural blueprints and a list of potential alternative sites, without specifying the exact types of equipment or their criticality to data processing operations. Option B, a documented list of all physical assets within the data center, including server racks, HVAC units, uninterruptible power supplies UPS, and network cabling, with an assessment of their individual failure impacts and required recovery time objectives. Option C, a high-level overview of the data center's physical location and its general purpose, along with a generic statement about the need for IT equipment. Option D, a detailed inventory of all IT hardware, software licenses, and network devices, but without specific consideration for the environmental controls or power infrastructure that supports them. Correct answer is B, a documented list of all physical assets within the data center, including server racks, HVAC units, uninterruptible power supplies UPS, and network cabling, with an assessment of their individual failure impacts and required recovery time objectives. Explanation: ISO 22317-2015, the standard for business impact analysis, BIA, emphasizes understanding the dependencies between business activities and the resources that support them. When considering facilities and equipment requirements, the core principle is to identify what is essential for the continuity of critical business functions. This involves not just listing the physical assets, but also understanding their criticality, the impact of their unavailability, and the timeframes within which they must be restored or substituted. The standard guides organizations to determine the maximum tolerable downtime for each activity, and consequently, the required recovery time objectives, RTO. For facilities, this translates to identifying alternative locations, necessary infrastructure, power, cooling, network connectivity, and physical security measures. For equipment, it means specifying the types of hardware, software, specialized machinery, and any supporting consumables or spare parts needed to resume operations within the defined RTOs. The process requires a thorough assessment of dependencies, including interdependencies between different pieces of equipment or facility services. For instance, a critical server rack might be useless without reliable power and cooling, highlighting the need to consider the entire ecosystem of support. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the recovery strategies developed for business continuity are realistic and achievable, directly informed by the detailed understanding of these facility and equipment dependencies. Question 15. Considering the framework established by ISO 22317-2015 for conducting a business impact analysis, which group of individuals is most indispensable for providing the granular operational data necessary to accurately identify critical business functions and their associated recovery requirements? Option A. Key customers and clients who rely on the organization's products or services for their own operations. Option B. Operational staff and functional managers directly involved in the execution of business processes. Option C. External regulatory agencies responsible for industry oversight and compliance mandates. Option D. Senior executives and board members responsible for overall organizational strategy and governance. The correct answer is B. Operational staff and functional managers directly involved in the execution of business processes. Explanation: the core of a successful business impact analysis, BIA, under ISO 22317-2015 hinges on the effective engagement and input from a diverse range of stakeholders. These individuals possess critical knowledge about business processes, their interdependencies, and the potential consequences of disruption. Regulatory bodies, while important for compliance, are typically external to the direct BIA process itself, providing guidelines rather than direct operational insights. Senior management provides strategic direction and resource allocation, but may not have the granular detail of day-to-day operations. Customers, while vital for business continuity, are generally not directly involved in the internal BIA process. Their needs are captured through business requirements. The individuals who are most crucial for providing the detailed information required for a BIA are those directly responsible for or deeply familiar with the operational aspects of critical business functions. These are the subject matter experts who understand the activities, dependencies, resource requirements, and impact of disruption on a granular level. Their insights are indispensable for accurately identifying critical processes, determining recovery time objectives, RTO, and establishing recovery point objectives, RPO. Without their input, the BIA would be based on assumptions rather than factual operational realities, leading to ineffective business continuity plans. Question 16. When performing a business impact analysis, BIA, according to ISO 22317-2015, how should an organization differentiate its assessment approach for a prolonged, widespread regional power grid failure compared to a highly sophisticated targeted denial of service, DoS, attack on its primary customer portal? Option A. Analyze the distinct temporal scales of impact and the unique dependencies that each disruption type places on different organizational resources and processes to inform recovery priorities. Option B. Focus solely on the immediate financial losses associated with each disruption, as this is the primary metric for all BIA exercises. Option C. Prioritize the assessment of physical infrastructure damage for the power grid failure and the reputational damage for the DoS attack, disregarding other impact categories. Option D. Assume that recovery time objectives, RTO, will be identical for all business functions regardless of the disruption type, due to the standardized nature of business continuity planning frameworks. The correct answer is A. Analyze the distinct temporal scales of impact and the unique dependencies that each disruption type places on different organizational resources and processes to inform recovery priorities. Explanation: the fundamental principle of a business impact analysis, BIA, as outlined in ISO 22317/2015, is to identify and assess the potential effects of disruptions on business activities. When considering different types of disruptions, such as a widespread natural disaster versus a targeted cyber attack, the BIA must account for varying timelines of impact, recovery dependencies, and the potential for cascading failures. A natural disaster, like a major flood, might cause widespread physical damage to infrastructure, leading to prolonged downtime for multiple interconnected business processes. In contrast, a sophisticated cyber attack such as ransomware could cripple specific IT systems, causing immediate operational paralysis for dependent functions, but potentially allowing for a quicker recovery if data backups are intact and the attack vector is isolated. The BIA's objective is to quantify these impacts in terms of financial loss, reputational damage, regulatory noncompliance, and operational degradation. Therefore, the most critical factor in distinguishing the BIA approach for these diverse disruptions is the analysis of how each disruption type uniquely affects the organization's critical business functions and their interdependencies over time, necessitating tailored impact assessments and recovery strategies. This involves understanding the root cause, scope, and potential progression of each event to accurately model its consequences. Question 17. When performing a business impact analysis BIA, in strict adherence to ISO 22317/2015, which widely recognized set of guidelines, offers the most directly complementary and supportive framework for the detailed methodologies of impact assessment, dependency mapping, and the determination of recovery objectives for critical business activities. Option A, the Business Continuity Institute BCI Good Practice Guidelines. Option B, the National Institute of Standards and Technology NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Option C, the ISO 27001 Information Security Management System Standard. Option D, the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, ITIL Service Support and Service Delivery Publications. The correct answer is A, the Business Continuity Institute BCI Good Practice Guidelines. Explanation: the core principle of ISO 22317/2015 is to identify and prioritize business activities based on their impact over time. This involves understanding the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, and the recovery time objective, RTO. NIST SB 800-34 provides a framework for contingency planning, and the BCI Good Practice Guidelines offer a comprehensive approach to business continuity. ISO 22317 specifically focuses on the business impact analysis, BIA phase. The BIA's primary output is the prioritization of activities and the determination of recovery requirements, including dependencies and resources. Therefore, when considering the alignment with ISO 22317, the most direct and relevant contribution from other standards would be those that inform or support the BIA's data gathering and analysis, particularly concerning the impact of disruptions on critical functions. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework, for instance, focuses on cybersecurity risk management, which is a component of overall business resilience, but not the primary driver of BIA prioritization in the context of ISO 22317. Similarly, ITIL Service Support and Service Delivery focus on IT service management, which is a critical area but broader than the specific BIA methodology outlined in ISO 22317. The BCI Good Practice Guidelines, however, are highly complementary as they detail the process of conducting a BIA, including identifying critical activities, assessing impacts, and determining recovery strategies, which directly supports the objectives of ISO 22317. Therefore, the BCI Good Practice Guidelines offer the most direct and applicable supplementary guidance for a BIA conducted in accordance with ISO 22317/2015, particularly in defining the methodology for impact assessment and resource identification. Question 18. When conducting a business impact analysis in accordance with ISO 22317-2015, what fundamental principle should guide the decision on how granular the analysis of business activities and their dependencies should be? Option A. The level of detail should be directly correlated with the criticality of the business activity and the potential impact of its disruption, balanced against the resources available for the analysis. Option B. The analysis should always be conducted at the most granular level possible to capture every potential dependency, regardless of the activity's criticality. Option C. The detail should be dictated solely by the requirements of regulatory bodies, with organizational criticality being a secondary consideration. Option D. The depth of the analysis should be standardized across all business activities to ensure consistency, irrespective of their individual impact. The correct answer is A. The level of detail should be directly correlated with the criticality of the business activity and the potential impact of its disruption, balanced against the resources available for the analysis. Explanation: the determination of the required level of detail in a business impact analysis, BIA, is a crucial aspect governed by several factors to ensure its effectiveness and efficiency. ISO 22317-2015 emphasizes that the depth of analysis should be directly proportional to the criticality of the business activity being assessed. Highly critical activities, those with significant financial, reputational, legal, or operational consequences if disrupted, necessitate a more granular examination of their dependencies, resource requirements, and impact over time. Conversely, less critical activities can be analyzed at a higher, more generalized level. Regulatory requirements, such as those mandated by data privacy laws like GDPR or financial sector regulations, also dictate a certain level of detail concerning the protection and recovery of specific types of information or critical financial processes. Furthermore, the organization's risk appetite and the complexity of the business process itself play a significant role. A complex process with numerous interdependencies will inherently require more detailed mapping than a simpler, more self-contained activity. The ultimate goal is to gather sufficient information to accurately identify recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, without expending excessive resources on analyzing non-essential elements. Therefore, a balanced approach that considers criticality, regulatory mandates, and process complexity is essential. Question 19. Consider a scenario where a regional data center outage affects a global e-commerce company. The outage directly impacts the order processing system, which is deemed a critical business function. However, the order processing system relies on several other supporting functions, including customer account management, inventory tracking, and payment gateway integration. If the customer account management system can be restored to its minimum acceptable operational level within 4 hours, the inventory tracking system within 8 hours, and the payment gateway integration within 6 hours, and the order processing system itself requires 12 hours to restore to its minimum acceptable operational level, after all its dependencies are met. What is the estimated duration of the operational disruption for the order processing function according to the principles of ISO 22317-2015? Option A, 20 hours. Option B, 12 hours. Option C, 8 hours. Option D, 6 hours. The correct answer is B, 12 hours. Explanation: ISO 22317-2015, the standard for business impact analysis, BIA, emphasizes understanding the cascading effects of disruptions on an organization's operations. When estimating the duration of operational disruptions, the standard advises considering not just the direct impact on a single process, but also the interdependencies between various business functions and the availability of critical resources, including personnel, technology, and third-party services. A key aspect of this estimation involves identifying the minimum acceptable operational level (MAL) for each critical business process. The MAL represents the lowest level of performance at which an organization can continue to operate without suffering unacceptable consequences. The time it takes to restore a process to at least its MAL, taking into account the availability of necessary resources and the resolution of underlying issues, directly informs the estimated duration of the disruption. This process is iterative and requires input from subject matter experts across different departments to accurately gauge recovery timelines and potential bottlenecks. For instance, a disruption to a core IT system might not only halt the immediate process it supports, but also prevent dependent processes from functioning, thereby extending the overall disruption duration. The standard promotes a holistic view, acknowledging that recovery is not a single event but a phased restoration of capabilities. Question 20. Considering the principles outlined in ISO 22317-2015 for business impact analysis, what is the most crucial element to identify and assess regarding an organization's critical supply chain dependencies to effectively inform recovery strategies? Option A. The total financial value of the goods or services procured from each supplier over the past fiscal year. Option B. Historical performance metrics of all suppliers, regardless of their criticality to core business operations. Option C. The number of employees working within the primary supplier's logistics and distribution departments. Option D. The specific contractual terms and conditions governing the supply of goods or services and the lead time for obtaining replacements from alternative, pre-qualified suppliers. Correct answer is D. The specific contractual terms and conditions governing the supply of goods or services and the lead time for obtaining replacements from alternative, pre-qualified suppliers. Explanation: ISO 22317-2015, the standard for business impact analysis, BIA, emphasizes understanding the dependencies and interdependencies within an organization's operations, including its supply chain. When assessing supply chain requirements for a BIA, the primary focus is on identifying critical suppliers and the potential impact of their disruption. This involves understanding the lead times for essential materials or services, the availability of alternative suppliers, and the contractual obligations or service-level agreements, SLAs, in place. The goal is to quantify the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for each critical supply chain component and to establish recovery time objectives, RTO, that align with the overall business continuity strategy. This process helps in prioritizing recovery efforts and resource allocation to ensure the most vital business functions can resume within acceptable timeframes, thereby mitigating financial losses, reputational damage, and regulatory noncompliance, as mandated by various industry-specific regulations that often dictate supply chain resilience. For instance, in the pharmaceutical sector, regulatory bodies like the FDA have stringent requirements regarding the continuity of the supply of critical drug components. A robust BIA will therefore not just list suppliers, but also analyze the criticality of their output, the potential for substitution, and the time it would take to onboard a new supplier if the primary one fails. The impact of a single critical supplier failure can cascade through the entire value chain, affecting downstream customers and potentially leading to significant financial and operational consequences. Therefore, the BIA must thoroughly document these interdependencies to inform the development of effective business continuity plans. Question 21. Consider a manufacturing firm where the assembly line operation is identified as a critical business activity. This assembly line relies on the timely delivery of specific component parts from an internal logistics department and a third-party supplier. The output of the assembly line is then used by the quality control department for testing before being shipped to customers. During a BIA, the analysis of the assembly line's dependencies reveals that a disruption to its operation would immediately halt the flow of finished goods to customers. Furthermore, the internal logistics department would experience a significant reduction in the movement of finished goods, while the third-party supplier might see a temporary increase in demand for component parts if the disruption is brief, or a sharp decrease if prolonged, as their orders are canceled. Which of the following accurately describes the primary focus of dependency analysis in this scenario for ISO 22317-2015? Option A. Mapping the direct and indirect impacts of the assembly line's disruption on upstream suppliers and downstream processes, including the quality control department and customer fulfillment. Option B. Quantifying the exact financial loss incurred by the third-party supplier due to potential order cancellations. Option C. Assessing the capacity of the internal logistics department to handle an increased volume of component parts during the disruption. Option D. Evaluating the historical performance data of the assembly line to predict future failure rates. The correct answer is A. Mapping the direct and indirect impacts of the assembly lines disruption on upstream suppliers and downstream processes, including the quality control department and customer fulfillment. Explanation: the core of dependency analysis within a business impact analysis, BIA, as outlined in ISO 22317, 2015, is to understand how the disruption of one business activity or resource impacts others. This involves identifying the inputs, outputs, and dependencies between different components of an organization. When a critical business activity is disrupted, its upstream dependencies, the resources or activities it relies upon, might experience a reduced demand or a change in their operational requirements. Conversely, its downstream dependencies, the activities or processes that rely on its output, will be directly affected by the absence of its output, leading to cascading failures or delays. Identifying these interconnections is crucial for understanding the full scope of impact and for developing effective recovery strategies. The primary goal is to map these relationships to understand how a single point of failure can propagate throughout the organization, influencing resource allocation and recovery prioritization. Question 22. Consider a scenario where a global logistics company, Swift Ship, is conducting its business impact analysis according to ISO 22317-2015. Their primary revenue-generating activity relies on a real-time shipment tracking system. During the BIA, the IT team identified that if this system is unavailable for more than 30 minutes, the company will lose critical customer data, leading to immediate financial penalties from key clients and a significant decline in operational efficiency due to manual workarounds. Furthermore, if the system remains down for over 4 hours, the reputational damage and loss of customer trust could lead to a sustained 15% reduction in future business. Which combination of IT infrastructure recovery metrics best reflects the criticality of the shipment tracking system, as per the principles of ISO 22317-2015? Option A. Recovery time objective RTO of 4 hours and a maximum tolerable downtime MTD of 1 hour. Option B. Maximum tolerable downtime MTD of 4 hours and a recovery time objective RTO of 1 hour. Option C. Minimum business continuity objective MBCO of 15% and a recovery time objective RTO of 4 hours. Option D. Maximum tolerable downtime MTD of 30 minutes and a recovery time objective RTO of 30 minutes. The correct answer is D. Maximum tolerable downtime MTD of 30 minutes and a recovery time objective RTO of 30 minutes. Explanation: the core of a business impact analysis, BIA, for IT infrastructure requirements as guided by ISO 22317, 2015, involves identifying and prioritizing critical IT components based on their impact on business operations. When assessing IT infrastructure, the focus is on determining the maximum tolerable downtime, MTD, for each critical system and the recovery time objective RTO required to resume essential business functions. The MTD represents the absolute longest period a business process can be unavailable before unacceptable consequences arise. The RTO is the target time within which a business process must be restored after a disruption. These metrics are crucial for defining the necessary recovery strategies and resource allocation. For instance, a critical customer-facing e-commerce platform might have an MTD of mere minutes and an RTO of less than an hour, necessitating highly resilient and rapidly recoverable IT infrastructure. Conversely, an internal HR system with less immediate operational impact might have a much longer MTD and RTO. The BIA process requires a thorough understanding of interdependencies between IT systems and business processes to accurately gauge these recovery needs. This understanding informs the selection of appropriate backup, replication, and failover solutions, ensuring that the IT infrastructure can support the business's resilience requirements in the event of a disruptive incident. The analysis also considers the minimum acceptable level of service, known as the Minimum Business Continuity Objective, MBCO, which defines the essential functionality required to keep the business operating at a reduced capacity. The alignment of IT recovery capabilities with these business-driven objectives is paramount. Question 23. Consider a scenario where a regional data center supporting a global financial services firm experiences a prolonged power outage. This outage directly impacts the firm's ability to process high-frequency trading transactions, a critical business activity. Beyond the immediate loss of transaction fees, what is the most significant operational impact that requires meticulous assessment according to ISO 22317-2015 principles, considering the interconnected nature of financial markets and regulatory oversight? Option A. The reputational damage incurred from a temporary suspension of trading services, affecting customer confidence and future investment. Option B. The loss of employee productivity due to the inability to access trading terminals and associated analytical software. Option C. The direct cost of repairing or replacing damaged data center hardware and the expense of temporary data center leasing. Option D. The potential for cascading failures in interconnected trading platforms, leading to systemic risk and regulatory sanctions for non-compliance with market integrity rules. The correct answer is D. The potential for cascading failures in interconnected trading platforms, leading to systemic risk and regulatory sanctions for non-compliance with market integrity rules. Explanation. The operational impact assessment within ISO 22317-2015 focuses on understanding the consequences of a disruption on an organization's ability to perform its critical activities. This involves identifying the resources, processes, and dependencies required for each activity. When assessing the operational impact, it is crucial to consider not only direct financial losses, but also indirect impacts such as reputational damage, regulatory noncompliance, and loss of customer trust. The standard emphasizes the need to quantify these impacts over time, establishing maximum tolerable periods of disruption, MTPOD, and recovery time objectives, RTO, for critical business functions. The assessment should consider the interdependencies between different business units and external stakeholders. For instance, a disruption in a supply chain management system might not only halt production, but also prevent the fulfillment of contractual obligations, leading to penalties and a loss of market share. Understanding the cascading effects of a disruption is paramount. Therefore, a comprehensive operational impact assessment involves mapping these dependencies and evaluating the cumulative effect of a disruption on the organization's overall capacity to operate and meet its strategic objectives. This detailed understanding informs the development of appropriate business continuity strategies and resource allocation for recovery. Question 24. Consider the operational framework of a global logistics company, Trans Global Freight, which handles international shipping and customs clearance. During a business impact analysis, the organization needs to define its core business functions and the specific activities that constitute them. Which of the following best exemplifies the hierarchical relationship between a business function and its constituent activities as prescribed by ISO 22317-2015 for a BIA? Option A. Business function, financial operations, activities, accounts payable processing, payroll disbursement, financial statement generation, budget forecasting. Option B. Business function, sales and marketing, activities, lead generation, proposal development, client relationship management, market research. Option C. Business function, customs brokerage, activities, processing import declarations, verifying duty calculations, coordinating with port authorities, managing tariff codes. Option D. Business function, fleet management, activities, vehicle maintenance schedules, fuel procurement, driver rostering, route optimization. The correct answer is C. Business function, customs brokerage, activities, processing import declarations, verifying duty calculations, coordinating with port authorities, managing tariff codes. Explanation. ISO 22317-2015, the standard for business impact analysis, BIA, outlines a systematic approach to identifying and evaluating the potential effects of disruptions on business operation. Core component of the BIA process involves the hierarchical decomposition of an organization's operations into distinct business functions and the granular activities that support them. This breakdown is crucial for understanding dependencies, identifying critical processes, and subsequently determining the impact of their unavailability. The standard emphasizes that a business function represents a broad operational capability, such as customer service or financial reporting. Within each function, specific activities are defined. These activities are the discrete tasks performed to deliver the function's output. For instance, under customer service, activities might include handling inbound calls, processing customer orders, or resolving complaints. The BIA then assesses the impact of the disruption of these activities over time, considering factors like financial loss, reputational damage, and regulatory noncompliance. The granularity of activity definition is vital. Too broad an activity may mask critical dependencies, while too narrow a definition can lead to an unmanageable level of detail. The standard guides practitioners to define activities at a level that allows for meaningful impact assessment and the identification of necessary resources for recovery. This structured approach ensures that the BIA effectively informs the development of appropriate business continuity strategies and plans. Question 25. Consider a scenario where a senior logistics manager at a global shipping firm is being interviewed for a business impact analysis. The firm operates under stringent international maritime regulations that mandate timely cargo manifest submissions and real-time tracking. The manager describes the primary function of coordinating vessel departures and arrivals. When asked about the impact of a disruption to this function, they emphasize the immediate need to reroute vessels to avoid port congestion penalties, which are substantial and accrue hourly. They also mention the critical reliance on a specific proprietary software system for manifest generation and the immediate need for external data feeds from customs agencies. The manager expresses concern about the potential for significant fines if manifest data is not transmitted within a strict 4-hour window after a vessel's departure. Which of the following aspects, if prioritized during the interview, would most directly contribute to establishing the critical recovery parameters for this function, according to ISO 22317-2015 principles? Option A. Evaluating the firm's current market share in the shipping industry and forecasting potential competitor responses to a service disruption. Option B. Quantifying the hourly penalties for delayed manifest submission and determining the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for the manifest generation system. Option C. Identifying the specific customs agencies involved and cataloging their respective data submission protocols for future reference. Option D. Detailing the alternative manual processes for vessel rerouting and assessing the manager's personal familiarity with backup communication channels. The correct answer is B. Quantifying the hourly penalties for delayed manifest submission and determining the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for the manifest generation system. Explanation: the core of a successful business impact analysis, BIA, interview, as guided by ISO 22317-2015, lies in eliciting comprehensive information about critical business functions, their dependencies, and the consequences of their disruption. When interviewing key personnel, the objective is to move beyond superficial description to understand the intricate relationships and quantifiable impacts. This involves probing for details on the interdependencies between different departments or processes, identifying the resources, human, technological, informational, essential for each function's operation, and establishing the acceptable downtime before significant negative effects manifest. Understanding the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, and the recovery time objective, RTO, for each function is paramount. Furthermore, the interviews must explore the cascading effects of a disruption, considering not only direct financial losses but also reputational damage, regulatory noncompliance, and impacts on customer relationships. A structured approach, including pre-interview preparation to understand the interviewee's role and a post-interview review to consolidate findings, ensures that the BIA accurately reflects the organization's operational realities and vulnerabilities. The emphasis is on gathering data that will inform the selection and prioritization of recovery strategies. Question 26. When conducting a business impact analysis in accordance with ISO 22317-2015, which of the following best represents the primary objective of the information gathering phase concerning critical business activities? Option A. To establish the maximum tolerable period of disruption for all business activities without any consideration for interdependencies or resource needs. Option B. Develop a comprehensive list of all potential threats and vulnerabilities that could impact the organization's operations, regardless of their likelihood. Option C. To solely collect financial data to quantify the direct monetary losses associated with the disruption of specific business processes. Option D. To identify and document the interdependencies between business activities, their resource requirements, and the potential impacts of their unavailability over defined timeframes, alongside relevant legal and regulatory constraints. The correct answer is D. To identify and document the interdependencies between business activities, their resource requirements, and the potential impacts of their unavailability over defined timeframes, alongside relevant legal and regulatory constraints. Explanation: the ISO 22317, 2015 Standard for Business Impact Analysis, BIA, emphasizes a structured approach to understanding the consequences of disruption. Clause 5.2. Information gathering details the critical inputs required for a robust BIA. This clause mandates the identification and collection of data related to business activities, their interdependencies, resource requirements, and the impact of their unavailability over time. The standard also highlights the importance of understanding regulatory and legal obligations that may dictate recovery timeframes or impose penalties for noncompliance, such as data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the organization's context, though the standard itself is not a regulation. For instance, a financial institution must consider the impact of extended downtime on its ability to meet reporting deadlines mandated by financial regulatory bodies, which would influence the determination of maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD. Similarly, a healthcare provider must consider patient safety implications and regulatory requirements for continuous care. The BIA process involves engaging with subject matter experts from various departments to ensure comprehensive data capture. The output of the information gathering phase directly informs the analysis of impacts and the subsequent determination of recovery objectives. Question 27. During a business impact analysis, BIA, for a financial services firm operating under stringent data privacy regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, what fundamental principle guides the determination of the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for a core transaction processing system? Option A. The time it takes for the business to manually process transactions without any technological assistance. Option B. The point at which the cumulative financial, reputational, and regulatory penalties outweigh the cost of immediate restoration. Option C. The shortest possible time frame achievable by the IT department's disaster recovery infrastructure. Option D. The average duration of similar past incidents experienced by industry competitors. The correct answer is B. The point at which the cumulative financial, reputational, and regulatory penalties outweigh the cost of immediate restoration. Explanation: the process of establishing recovery timeframes, specifically the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, is a critical output of the business impact analysis, BIA, as defined in ISO 22317, 2015. The MTPD represents the absolute longest duration an organization can endure a disruption to a business activity before unacceptable consequences arise. This timeframe is not determined by technical recovery capabilities alone, but rather by a holistic assessment of the potential impacts. These impacts are categorized into several types, including financial, operational, reputational, legal, and regulatory. When establishing the MTPD, an organization must consider the cascading effects of a prolonged outage. For instance, a failure to resume a critical customer service function within a certain period could lead to significant financial losses due to lost revenue and contract penalties, a severe decline in customer trust and brand image, and potential violations of service-level agreements, SLAs, or even regulatory mandates, such as those under GDPR or HIPAA, which impose strict data handling and availability requirements. The BIA's role is to quantify these potential impacts at different points in time following a disruption. By analyzing the cumulative negative effects across these categories, the organization identifies the point at which the disruption becomes intolerable. This involves understanding the dependencies between different business activities and the potential for secondary impacts to emerge over time. Therefore, the MTPD is a strategic decision informed by the BIA's analysis of the business's tolerance for various types of harm, rather than a purely technical specification. Question 28. When conducting a business impact analysis, BIA, according to ISO 22317, 2015, What is the primary objective of meticulously documenting the interdependencies between critical business activities, supporting IT systems, and essential third-party suppliers? Option A. To provide a detailed audit trail for regulatory compliance, ensuring all external vendor contracts are accurately referenced within the BIA. Option B. To create a comprehensive inventory of all physical assets and their maintenance schedules to prevent future equipment failures. Option C. To facilitate the immediate identification of all non-essential business activities that can be suspended during a minor operational interruption. Option D. To establish a clear understanding of the cascading effects of disruptions and identify critical single points of failure across operational processes. The correct answer is D. To establish a clear understanding of the cascading effects of disruptions and identify critical single points of failure across operational processes. Explanation. The core principle of documenting dependencies within a business impact analysis, BIA, as outlined in ISO 22317-2015, is to identify and record the interrelationships between business activities, resources, and external entities that are critical for an organization's operations. This documentation is not merely an inventory, but a critical component for understanding the cascading effects of disruptions. For instance, if a key customer-facing portal relies on a specific database server for real-time data, and that database server, in turn, depends on a particular network switch, then the failure of that switch will impact the database, which will then render the portal inoperable, ultimately affecting customer service. The BIA must capture these layers of dependency to accurately assess the impact of a disruption on critical business functions. This includes internal dependencies, such as one department's output serving as another's input, and external dependencies, like reliance on third-party service providers, utility companies, or regulatory bodies. The level of detail required in documenting these dependencies is directly proportional to their criticality in maintaining essential business operations and achieving recovery objectives. It informs the development of appropriate recovery strategies and resource allocation, ensuring that all necessary components are considered when planning for resilience. The process involves identifying the upstream and downstream connections for each critical activity and resource, thereby mapping the flow of information, services, and materials. This comprehensive mapping is vital for identifying single points of failure and understanding the potential ripple effects of an incident across the organization and its ecosystem. Question 29. Consider the scenario of a global financial services firm whose primary trading platform experiences an unforeseen system-wide failure. According to the principles of ISO 22317-2015, what is the fundamental objective when initiating the business impact analysis for this critical activity, beyond simply identifying the system's failure? Option A. Determine the maximum tolerable period of disruption for the trading platform and establish specific recovery time and point objectives. Option B. To communicate the outage to all stakeholders and prepare a public relations statement regarding the incident. Option C. To immediately initiate disaster recovery procedures and assess the cost of restoring the trading platform from backups. Option D. To conduct a root cause analysis of the system failure and implement immediate technical patches. The correct answer is A. To determine the maximum tolerable period of disruption for the trading platform and establish specific recovery time and point objectives. Explanation. The core of a business impact analysis, BIA, as outlined in ISO 22317-2015, is to systematically identify and evaluate the potential effects of disruptions on business activities. This involves understanding how the absence of critical resources or functions would impact the organization over time. The standard emphasizes the need to determine the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, which is the longest period an organization can afford for a business activity to be unavailable before unacceptable consequences arise. It also focuses on establishing recovery time objectives, RTO, which are the target times within which a business activity must be restored after a disruption, and recovery point objectives, RPO, which define the maximum acceptable amount of data loss measured in time. These objectives are crucial for guiding the development of appropriate business continuity strategies. The analysis must consider various impacts, including financial, operational, reputational, and legal/regulatory. For instance, A disruption to a customer-facing online portal might have immediate financial implications due to lost sales, escalate to reputational damage if customers cannot access services, and potentially lead to regulatory noncompliance if data privacy is compromised. The BIA is foundational for all subsequent business continuity planning activities. Question 30. Consider an organization developing its business continuity framework. The Business Impact Analysis, BIA, has identified that the Customer Relationship Management (CRM) system is critical, with a maximum tolerable downtime of 48 hours. The risk assessment, conducted independently, has identified a cyber attack as a significant threat to the CRM system, assigning it a likelihood rating of medium and an impact rating of severe if it occurs. How does the integration of these findings, as advocated by ISO 22317/2015 principles, most effectively inform the subsequent business continuity strategy for the CRM system? Option A. The integration indicates that the CRM system's criticality is solely determined by the BIA's 48-hour downtime tolerance, rendering the risk assessment's findings on cyber attacks irrelevant to the recovery planning. Option B. The integration highlights that the severe impact of a cyber attack, as per the risk assessment, overrides the BIA's 48-hour downtime tolerance, necessitating an immediate shutdown of the CRM system until all cyber threats are eliminated. Option C. The integration suggests that since the BIA's maximum tolerable downtime is 48 hours and the risk assessment's likelihood is only medium, no specific recovery strategies are immediately necessary for the CRM system. Option D. The integration mandates a recovery time objective, RTO, for the CRM system that is significantly less than 48 hours, driven by the high impact and medium likelihood of a cyber attack, requiring proactive threat mitigation. Correct answer is D. The integration mandates a recovery time objective, RTO, for the CRM system that is significantly less than 48 hours, driven by the high impact and medium likelihood of a cyber attack, requiring proactive threat mitigation. Explanation. The integration of risk assessment with a business impact analysis, BIA, is crucial for a comprehensive understanding of organizational resilience. ISO 22317/2015 emphasizes that a BIA identifies critical business functions and their impact over time, but it does not inherently quantify the likelihood of these impacts occurring. Risk assessment, conversely, focuses on identifying threats, vulnerabilities, and the probability of those threats materializing. When these two processes are integrated, the BIA's outputs, e.g., maximum tolerable downtime, recovery time objectives, can be informed by the risk assessment's likelihood estimations. For instance, a high-impact, low-likelihood event identified in the risk assessment might still necessitate a robust recovery strategy, but the urgency or resource allocation might differ compared to a high-impact, high-likelihood event. This synergy allows organizations to prioritize resilience efforts based on both the potential impact of disruptions and the probability of those disruptions occurring, leading to more efficient and effective resource allocation for business continuity and disaster recovery planning. This holistic approach ensures that resilience strategies address not only what would happen if a disruption occurs, but also how likely it is to occur in the first place, thereby optimizing the development of appropriate mitigation and response plans. It moves beyond simply understanding the consequences of failure to actively managing the probability of that failure.